Did you know that in many cities there are dozens of fake buildings? In New York, there are facades to hide subway ventilation, but there's an entire town of fake buildings in England. You can find fake stores, nightclubs, restaurants, and homes. This eerie empty town is only populated during police training. The first 4 decades of the modern Olympics were about more than just sports. There were competitions in music, sculpture, painting, architecture, and literature. The father of the modern games, Baron Pierre de Coubertin, thought fine arts were essential because they were included in some ancient versions of the games. Your DNA is what makes you who you are, but scientists estimate that 5 to 8% of your DNA isn't even human. Viruses are infecting your body and injecting a copy of their genetic code into yours, meaning you're a little less human than you thought. There's a 50 square mile section of America where all crimes are legal, even murder. This real-life purge location is called the Zone of Death and is located in Yellowstone National Park. A quirk of the U.S. Constitution created a loophole allowing any crime. Luckily, it hasn't been tested yet. The U.S. nuclear missile system is less high-tech than you think. It's run on obsolete IBM computers and floppy disks, technology from the 60s. But there's a good reason for this. The tech is reliable and secure and is better protected from hackers and threats than a complex modern system. A California teen had the worst airplane seat in history. He survived a 6-hour trip to Hawaii in the wheel well of a Boeing 767, flying at 38,000 feet with negative 40-degree Fahrenheit temperatures. He did it hoping the plane would take him to be reunited with his mother in Africa. Is it possible for a human to fit through a shoebox-sized hole? If you're a prisoner in South Korea with a door meal tray slot that size, then yes, the contortion act was aided by yoga techniques and lots of lotion. He was caught 6 days later and put in a cell with an even smaller slot. A veteran skydiver jumped out of a plane only to find his parachute was malfunctioning. After his backup failed, he came to terms with his death. He awoke to discover he survived the 15,000-foot fall by landing in a blackberry bush. Accepting his fate and becoming less tense is what may have saved him. If you're looking for a creative gift for your loved one, San Quentin State Prison has the solution. The prison has its own gift shop run by the prison's director of art, where you can purchase pieces made by death row inmates. But it's only open for 2 hours a day. Their time really is limited. Do you dream in color? 75% of people do, but before color television became mainstream in the 1960s, only 15% did. The next time you're talking to someone born before we knew Lucy had red hair, ask them how they see their dreams. The U.S. military has been hard at work on a secret project that's going to give our troops the edge they need. The Super Classified Project? A new style of Velcro that's 95% quieter than the traditional kind. Great job, boys. A rare condition allows someone to remember their lives in perfect detail. These memories are mostly autobiographical though, so a person with hyperthymesia is stuck recalling all the bad, boring, and embarrassing moments of their life over and over again. Like the time you peed your pants in school and everyone laughed. Aww. Public toilet seats. They're disgusting, smelly, and unclean. Or are they? It turns out that whether you hover or cover, the germs you're worried about are probably on your hands right now. So it's completely safe for your bare bottom to touch the seat. The real question is, have you cleaned your phone recently? Can spoilers be deadly? In 2018, a scientist in Antarctica stabbed a coworker after they revealed the ending of a book the scientist was reading. This wasn't the first time the coworker had ruined a book's ending. And spoiler alert, they managed to survive the stabbing. Sweet, sour, salty, bitter, savory, the 5 tastes we all know. But is there a hidden one? Research suggests there's a 6th, fat. It's described as unpleasant, bitter, or sour, but it's hard to pin down exactly what the taste is because there's no word in our vocabulary that can accurately express the flavor. The #1 cause of deaths while driving? Road rage. The next time you lose your cool, remember that 66% of traffic fatalities are tied to aggressive driving, such as horn honking, rude gestures, and tailgating. And half of drivers on the receiving end admit to responding aggressively themselves. Why would you ever strip off your clothes when freezing? It's called paradoxical undressing, a symptom of severe hypothermia. Damage to the nerves makes you feel irrationally hot. The real mystery is why so many victims of hypothermia are then found trying to burrow in small areas naked. Would cats meow without humans? Meowing is how kittens talk to their mothers, but adult cats communicate with each other in other ways. They've learned that humans pay attention to meows though, and now they won't shut up. We are sensitive to the frequencies cats use because they're similar to the ones we use when we need help. 2 different sets of non-identical twin brothers discovered that they weren't twins at all, but were living with each other's identical twin. After a coworker of one brother thought she saw her colleague behind the counter of a butcher shop, it was revealed that there was a mix-up at the hospital where the 4 men were born. Is a urinal one of the first pieces of conceptual art? Marcel Duchamp entered Fountain in the exhibition of the Society of Independent Artists in 1917 to test the limits of what they considered art. Although they stated that all works would be accepted from artists who paid the fee, Fountain was rejected. Ever wish you could get away for a bit? Well, if you could drive straight up into the sky at 60 miles per hour, it would only take about an hour to reach outer space. You probably wouldn't have anyone bothering you there, but the lack of oxygen might be an issue. Driving to the moon would take around 6 months though, so bring a snack. Have you ever noticed anything unusual about a person when they speak a different language? Studies have shown that people who speak more than one language may assume a different personality depending on which language they're speaking. 2/3 of bilinguals claim they feel like a different person when speaking different languages. In 1993, a contestant on the game show Jeopardy won a game with just $1, the lowest winning score in the game's history. The highest amount one can win is $566,400. All it takes is clearing the boards, doubling in every daily double, and then wagering everything in Final Jeopardy. Oh, and being an absolute genius. The most expensive pizza in the world costs $12,000. It takes 72 hours to prepare the dough and is topped with buffalo mozzarella, 3 types of caviar, lobster from Norway, Mediterranean shrimp, and hand-picked pink Australian sea salt. The cost also includes 3 Italian chefs who cook it for you in your own kitchen. Some brand names are so synonymous with the product that they became generic names. For example, bubble wrap is supposed to be air bubble packaging, and popsicles are really frozen ice treats on sticks. A pogo stick, not made by the inventors Max Poling and Ernest Gottschall, get it, is really a spring stilt or a hopping vehicle. How did Crumbs almost ruin a space mission? An astronaut smuggled a corned beef sandwich into space in his pocket in 1965. He had a few bites, but sandwiches don't fare well in space, and it began to break up. He had to return it to his pocket before it caused damage to anything. Were duck lips a thing in Victorian times? Before we said cheese while taking photos, the big thing in the 1800s was to say prunes instead. A big grin was considered childish, but the word prunes gave subjects a more mature fish lip look. Can bacon save lives? For hostage negotiator Frank Bowles, the answer is yes. After negotiating with a hostage taker all night, he knew the man must be hungry, so he sent out for a pound of bacon, set up a small propane grill outside the barricaded apartment, and lured the hostage keeper out with the smell of breakfast. The Rubiks Cube was a learning tool? Erno Rubik created it in the 70s while working as a professor of architecture in Budapest. He wanted to create a structure in which individual pieces could move without the entire thing falling apart to teach about design, but sadly he failed and just created one of the best-selling toys of all time. Mimicry is often used by insects to ward off predators, but the Macrocyclic's Maya moth takes it a step further by having wings that look like flies eating bird droppings. Many predators associate bird droppings with disease and skip over prey they see doing this. To really seal the deal, the moth also emits a pungent odor. The Panamerican Highway is the longest stretch of road in the world. Over 18,000 miles in length, travelers of the highway usually drive around 30,000 miles going off track to sightsee. The only place not drivable is a Darien Gap between Panama and Colombia, so plan for that if you intend on making the trip. During a worldwide hop shortage in 2008, Sam Adams randomly chose 108 microbreweries and sold them hops at cost to keep them in business because they saw them as colleagues rather than competitors. What a good drinking buddy Sam is. Cuneiform was one of the first forms of writing. The Sumerians created it around 3200 BC. Between 500,000 and 2 million cuneiform tablets have been estimated to be excavated in modern times, but only a fraction of those have been read, just like the books on our shelf at home. In 2004, Parisian police descended down to the city's catacombs for a training exercise and discovered a cavern with a fully equipped cinema and another room with a bar and restaurant. When they returned a few days later to trace the electrical wires, they found them severed along with a note saying, "Don't try to find us." Très spooky. One of the first television programs was called The Television Ghost. It aired from 1931 to 1933 and consisted of a ghost telling the story of how they were murdered. This ghost was played by the same actor who wore white makeup and a towel draped over his head. The real tragedy, though, is that no recordings survive. Did the ancient Greeks actually invent the medieval Iron Maiden? Historian Polybius recorded that Nabius, a tyrant who ruled Sparta, created a device that resembled his wife, Agrippa. Citizens who wronged him were sent to Agrippa standing with her arms held open. When they hugged her, her nail-covered arms would close. Talk about tough love. Is getting takeout an ancient innovation? Archaeologists have found around 150 counters open to the street for takeout in Pompeii, which was destroyed in 79 AD. Called thermopolia, which means a place where something hot is sold, you could also bring food there to have it cooked for you. How does a nice bacteria-filled soup sound? In 1984, Dr. Barry Marshall drank a broth containing bacteria to prove that bacteria can survive in the stomach and that antibiotics can help. People thought he was crazy, but after he biopsied his own stomach and took some antibiotics, he showed the critics and won the Nobel Prize in Physiology. During the Middle Ages, people didn't understand epilepsy or bipolar disorder, or really any psychological or neurological diseases. Philosophers and scientists believed that these people were sick from the moon, hence the word lunatic, which comes from the Latin word for the moon luna and means of the moon or moonsick. In 1921, the Coast Guard spotted a ship that had run aground in North Carolina. The sails of the Carol A. Deering were fully set and the lifeboats and all 11 crew members were gone. There was food left out on the stove and the captain's quarters was a mess. Where they went is still a mystery. In the Victorian era, if you didn't like someone, you were able to express your feelings with a Vinegar Valentine. These were the opposite of today's Valentine cards and would insult the recipient. Unsurprisingly, not many exist today since no one wants to hang on to an anonymously sent rude card. When New York City Attorney Charles E. Rushmore was in South Dakota, he asked a local man what a particular mountain was called. The man responded that it didn't have a name, but from now on it would be called Rushmore. The name stuck, and today over 3 million people per year visit the now carved mountain. There's a subway station in New York City that's completely abandoned. Old City Hall is considered one of the most beautiful stops in the city, but was closed in 1945. But if you break the rules a bit and hang around on a particular train, you can catch a glimpse of the station as the train loops around.